Just buttoning up a couple of little details here in the down-to-earth woodworking shop, getting ready to install the new dust collection system. What I'm doing right now, I have a 16-inch on-center joist supporting the floor upstairs, and that's been fine. In fact, I probably threw away 1,000 pounds of junk upstairs, so I'm not too worried about the 261-pound dust collector, but better safe than sorry. So I decided to put in a couple of extra joists on 8-inch centers between the other joists. That sounds like pretty easy, but turned out to be quite the challenge. I was able to take the joists and put it in flat by bowing the board a little bit, but then turning it upright and getting it into position turned out to be quite a challenge. I wound up unscrewing the screws from the floor decking above and then using a little leverage to twist the board upright and get it into place. Once I did that, I was able to screw the screws back in upstairs and screw in the new joists. And I'm just putting a hurricane tie over here. Not really necessary, but it makes me feel a little better. Let's go upstairs and see what I've gotten accomplished up there. Well, I had quite a bit of work to do upstairs to get ready to install the dust collector. The sheathing on the walls only came up part way and wasn't finished, so I really needed to get that finished. First thing that I needed to do was to pull the fluorescent lights down, which had just been mounted temporarily directly to the roof rafters. I pulled those down and I redid all the wiring, and I put everything on a switched circuit so I can turn on all the lights up here with one flip of a switch. While I was at it, I went ahead and wired for an additional light down here. I have one of these downstairs and I really like it. It's a 3-spotlight fixture. It's only about 20 bucks, and you can aim the spotlights anywhere you want. So I set that up, put a box up there for that. I went ahead and evened up the sheathing on the walls. Then I put some cross braces in, filled the cavity with insulation, and then mounted this flat board up here and trimmed out the juncture between the two pieces. Then I remounted my fluorescent lights, I mounted my new light, and then I started painting. Of course, as you can tell, I didn't paint this side. This side over here is where the dust collector is going to go, so I concentrated on that. And this OSB or wafer board really soaks up the paint. So I got 2 coats of paint over here. It really brightened the area up. The additional lights helped. So I think this is pretty much ready. Okay, so let's take a look at the dust collection components before the assembly begins. As you see, I've got everything laid out. I've got a moving blanket down here just to keep things from getting scratched up. I would have loved to have shown you the packaging, but unfortunately the day this was delivered, we were sort of in the middle of a epic snowstorm, and the driver had a very difficult time getting the pallet down out of the truck. Then we had a very difficult time getting the pallet jack up the driveway, and then when we got to the door we just couldn't get across the threshold. So the driver, very nice guy, and I appreciate very much, he helped me unpack everything and bring it inside. Unfortunately I didn't get pictures of the packaging, but I can describe it to you. It's very thick wall cardboard container stapled to a wooden crate. Inside that, all the components were nested together very nicely, styrofoam in strategic locations, the metal pieces covered with plastic to keep them from getting scratched up. So overall the packaging was quite good. Now, one note, the control panel is not attached. That's the only assembly I've done, 2 screws. And I did that for a reason. The control panel, while it's hardwired into the main dust collection system, is packaged in a cardboard box with bubble wrap around it and just the wire snaking out of the box. I took that out of the box and went ahead and mounted it because I didn't want it dangling down from the system while we're trying to wrestle this heavy beast up the stairs. So that's the only thing I've assembled so far. This is a box of all the accessories, the wheels, the nuts, bolts, and things like that are in this box. And interestingly, I just wanted to make one note. Packed in with the dust collector is the bag frame, which holds the plastic bag in place in the dust collection drum. Now this is listed as an accessory, on JDS's website, but for some reason, I didn't order it, but for some reason it was included in the packaging. And I really don't think this is something they did special for me, because I haven't talked to them and they don't know me from Adam. So I'll find out if this is now included or if it was a mistake. Either way, I appreciate it. We'll give it a try and see how that works out. So before we start assembling the thing, let me show you some of the details of the individual components. All right, well, the first piece to look at on this is the base. As you can see, it comes in a piece of plastic here, ostensibly to protect the paint. And fit and finish seems to be pretty good. The paint job is very nice. These are drilled and tapped holes for the fasteners. The vertical side upright pieces mount in those holes, and the back mounts here and to the side pieces. There's a grounding screw here to connect a ground wire, I would assume from the piping for the system. And on the back you can see that this base piece is a sheet metal formed piece, but it's very heavy metal. These are 4 screw holes for the casters in each corner. So all in all, it looks pretty good. The first step, of course, is to mount the casters, and we'll get that taken care of. Then we can start putting the side support pieces on. Okay, I've got the base assembly laid out again on another moving blanket. Sorry it's blue, but that's just the color I had. I'm going to get rid of that as soon as I can flip this over and put it on its wheels. The wheels are ready to attach. Now, one note, in the instructions they refer to 2 fixed wheels and 2 rotating wheels. What I found though when I opened the package is that there are 2 swiveling wheels and 2 swiveling wheels with locks. I don't know if this was a change to the product and the instruction manual just hasn't caught up, but I think it was probably based on customer requests. This is, after all, supposed to be a mobile unit. And 4 swiveling casters is easier to move around the shop than 2 fixed and 2 swiveling casters. So I'll find out if that's an engineering change that just didn't get caught in the manual or what. But in the meantime, I've decided to put the rotating wheels without the locks in the position that the instructions call for the fixed wheels. And the swiveling wheels with the locks are going to go where the instructions call for the swiveling wheels. Now, the bolts, flange bolts, take a 12mm wrench. I chose to use a socket wrench. They do include this magnificent little wrench here that you can use. Okay, with the casters on, the next step is to put the vertical upright pieces. This is the center piece that runs across the frame, and I believe it mounts just like this. And then these are the side pieces, and got them upside down. They mount like this. These holes mount into that piece, and then the whole thing gets screwed down to the base. So let's get these pieces assembled, and you know what's next. Okay, so mounting the vertical supports requires the use of these button head screws. The frame members are all tapped, ready for that. Again, they do provide this little Allen wrench, but I'm going to use a socket with an Allen end in a socket set here, because I just think it'll be easier to get the screws started. Okay, so the main frame assembly now is together. The wheels are on it, everything's tightened up, buttoned up, and ready to go. So the last thing that I did was I've moved this into the middle of this upstairs area just so that because of the peak in the roof that I have as much height as possible. The big main unit has to be lifted up, over, and down onto the frame, so I want to make sure I don't have any height problems. The other thing that I've done, since all four of the wheels don't lock, I didn't want this to slide around. And I happen to have some of those pucks, for lack of better terminology, that they're vibration stopping rubber pads, supposedly, that you can put under a front load washing machine. And I happen to have four of those, and they're just right, so I put them down here, set the wheels into those units, and it's fairly stationary. It's not sliding around. So the last thing I need to do is I need to prep the main body of the unit to get it ready to carry. Alright, now this is the business end of the unit. The motor, the cyclone impeller itself, the housing, the cyclone cylinder. So this is the heavy side. Control boxes up here. And just picking this up, it's probably 100+ pounds just on this side without picking up the other side. So it's kind of a beast. Now, one of the things I noticed early on was when I unpacked this is that there's two big steel eyelets. There's one here and one over here. And my guess is that was probably used in the original manufacturing process. They probably lowered this down using a block and tackle into the frame, or used it somehow to help out in the assembly of this in the factory. I'm going to use this. I tied a strap on here, a webbing strap, and I'm going to use this around my wrist to help me grab this as we're carrying it up. Of course, I got the heavy end, right? I hope I remembered my Boy Scout knots, and that holds. Anyway, used another webbing strap over here just to tie up the power cord, make sure it's not dangling down and loose. And we're pretty much ready to go. Still on the moving blanket. I'm going to drag it over to the base of the stairs just to cut down on how far we have to actually lug this thing. And before we start, I think I'm going to go have myself an energy drink. Well, now with the main unit assembled, I'm just working on some of the details here. Attaching the swivel rollers to the bottom of the dust barrel, and I found out it's a 12mm hex head under there, but my 12mm wrench was actually too thick. So I take back everything I said about the cheap little wrench that was included. It's actually the only thing that'll fit in there to tighten up these wheels. So thanks for including this little wrench. Alright, so now the instructions say to roll the bucket into place, put the lid on, and attach the coupling between the dust collection system and the lid. So we'll do that step next. Okay, other than carrying this thing so far, the hardest part of the assembly has been connecting this little piece of hose. This was a little like wiggling an undersized sock onto somebody else's oversized foot while they were moving it. Now the next step is to mount these handy dandy bucket clamps. And the idea behind this, it's not spelled out real well in the directions, but the idea behind this is that you can adjust this so you can clamp the lid down securely and put a little downward pressure on it. There's a foam seal in this lid, and if you clamp this down, it'll seal the lid to the bucket for dust collection. Then when it's time to empty the bucket, you can lift this handle up and raise up the lid enough to pull the bucket out. What they don't tell you in the instructions is the part about attaching this to the bucket. But you can see that it's very similar to any type of push clamp that you use presently in the shop. So what you want to do is just give yourself some room here so that you can mount this, and then later we'll adjust it. Okay, so now with this mounted, still not fully tightened up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower this down into this slot here and thread on this nut. And we can see if we've got, I might like that just a little bit tighter. So all we got to do is loosen this and turn this knob to push this lid down a little bit. And that looks like a pretty tight fit. Maybe just a little bit more. Okay. And I've got this side all set. So now I'm going to finish tightening these screws home. Okay, so we've got a nice tight seal here on the top of the bucket. Bucket won't turn in there, so that's good. And then by simply flipping both these levers up, we'll condense this thing and the bucket will roll out. And then to reinstall it, just put it back into place and lower it back down, and the bucket's locked into place again. Pretty cool. So pretty much the last step in the assembly is to set up the plastic bag here that catches the dust that comes out of the filter. They provide this gasket material which goes around here. I've already checked and this is going to need to be trimmed. It's a little over long, which is perfectly fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start here. Actually I think I'll start here. I'm going to wrap, it's self-adhesive. I'm just going to wrap this around. Whoops. And we'll just cut it right there to get a nice fit. Then the bag simply mounts on here. Perfect. Real nice fit. And if I can figure out how to use this clamp, that looks reasonable. There we go. Actually way easier than my old Delta system. So this will collect the dust that the flappers knock off when the machine stops running. One of the features of this machine is every time you turn off the dust collection, a motor runs up top and turns flappers on the inside of the filter to knock off the dust, and the dust falls into this bag. So that looks pretty good. Well, that knot I tied in my little strap there to use as a handle is a pretty good knot. I think I'm going to have to cut this to get it off. Thank goodness for that Boy Scout training oh so many years ago. Other than carrying this beast upstairs, the assembly was actually quite easy. The fit and finish was fantastic. All the holes lined up perfectly. The pre-threaded holes were nice and smooth. All the screws went in well. So overall, the assembly, I would give it a A+. The instructions, they're okay. You'll be able to figure it out. Now, in the next video, we're going to start plumbing this up. And remember, we're going to run ductwork downstairs. We're going to drop lines. We're going to run a floor sweep. And we're going to run a line over to the miter saw. So be sure and come back for the next video as we start to plumb up the piping for this dust collection system. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.